Hey everyone, we're with my friend John Russo, who is adjusting something with his computer. How you doing, John?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. So now your title is John Russo, Alameda City Manager.
Well, not June 13th, yes.
June 13th.
Yeah.
But for all practical purposes.
Well, I'm still here in the office at Oakland City Hall, but today is the first day that decisions about cases and about issues are being handled by my three chief lieutenants.
And who are they?
Randy Hall's handling litigation, Barbara, which he has done for 16 years, I think. He's been director of litigation here. Barbara Parker is the chief assistant city attorney for advice. That means she handles the council's agenda, and Vicki Layden handles all personnel matters. So those three folks, starting today, no longer need my sign-off to make decisions, but I'm still here. I've got projects that need to be finished in the next month, but the transition has started for us in the office today. And of course, Vicki and Barbara and Randy know I'm here and are always free, as a couple of my lawyers came in this morning to ask about something. They wanted advice, so I'm here for advice purposes. But from now on, de facto, those decisions are being made by the other three.
How do you feel about the decision you made?
Mixed feelings. I mean, I feel very good about the decision. I feel a lot of mixed feelings about leaving Oakland, of course. I still live here. My kids go to school here. They're in public school here. I haven't lived anywhere but Oakland since I moved to California in '87, and I have never worked anywhere but Oakland.
Well, given that, do you feel that in an odd kind of way?
I don't mean city of Oakland. I mean,
right.
I was in private law.
Yeah, we were private practice.
Only worked. I've never worked since I was 28 years old. I've lived only in Oakland. I've worked only in Oakland.
When did you come to Oakland? What year?
1987.
Oh. Do you feel in some way you were pushed out?
No, not at all. There's very little doubt in my mind that there are some people who are opposed to the gang injunction. There are other people who are disappointed in the Fed's position on pot farms, which is not my position policy-wise, but is the Fed's position, and it's a legal issue. I think there are some people who are disappointed. Some of them, particularly regarding the injunction, have this fantasy that the voice of the people has spoken and I have left as a result. Russo's left because of the injunction. That's really an ignorant position on so many levels, but on a private level, I can tell you it's totally not the case. But on a public level, it starts with the premise that the gang injunctions are unpopular with the majority of Oaklanders, whereas the reality is they're very popular, particularly in the neighborhoods where we are seeking them. So that's not why. I'm leaving, I am leaving because I have strong, fundamental legal disagreements with the new city leadership.
The mayor.
And those who are speaking most loudly at the council. Mm-hmm. And because I have fundamental moral disagreements with the direction that this government is taking in dealing with the crises that face Oakland.
But I got to ask you this question as a guy who, frankly speaking, would have liked to see you stay. Mm-hmm. Given that you're elected, why not just fight it out? I mean, you've got the most power of any elected, well, you're Oakland's first and only elected city attorney.
It's very difficult.
I mean, you could throw a punch that would be a nuclear bomb.
I could, and it would be a misuse of the power of this office. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. If I wanted to stay here and I wanted to do what some of those opponents of mine claim I'm doing, if I wanted to gum up the works, somebody who was in opposition to the government in this role could bring the government to a dead halt. Mm-hmm. And on certain issues, believe me, I'd love to take a different posture than this government has taken. I think it's ethically inappropriate because the city attorney has to
follow the policy of the council. It doesn't mean we have to tell the council what they want to hear about the law, but we have to enforce the policy faithfully, enforce the policy of the council and the administrative policy of the mayor. And I'm not the right person to do it because, as I said, I disagree with them on legal issues, and I am completely opposed to many of the ways they are dealing with, or better put, failing to deal with,
Right.
the crises that face Oakland, which are public safety and finance.
But
Those two issues are gripping this city, and
Right.
the city is headed 180 degrees in the wrong
I
direction.
gotta ask you this question.
Yeah.
You're elected by the people, not by them.
Yeah.
So why not just say, you know what? The people elected me, and I'm the check and balance. And as the people's representative, this is what you've got to do.
The city attorneys, here's the thing.
I mean, because it actually almost calls into question. You're starting to call into question having an elected city
No.
attorney, because someone's going to say, "Oh well, we might as well let them appoint."
There have been so many
And my
times-
argument is that they need somebody to kick them in the butt.
No, there have been
That's me.
I hear you. There have been so many times over the past 10 and a half years that I've been city attorney that I have disagreed with the council or disagreed with the mayor on the direction of policy. However, as the attorney, I was comfortable going forward. I was comfortable with the idea that being independent, in other words, having the people elect the city attorney, being independent allowed me to give an independent judgment to the decision makers, not having to cover for them, but give them an independent opinion on the legality of what they were trying to do. And there were dozens of issues where, even though the legality was okay, and what the council or the mayor was trying to do passed legal muster, I felt it was a foolish direction. That has happened dozens of times, because I used to be on the council. I have very strong opinions. I've never taken those opinions public. The directions that the government is moving now are morally not, they are, I think, morally questionable. And I felt that the decent thing to do was I could no longer serve ethically as the city attorney
Give me
for
an
this
example of
government.
something you
I
said.
can't do that. I can't give you an example.
That's a
You
strong,
can look
that's a
in the
strong
news-
term.
You can look in the newspapers and figure out what some of those issues are, where I have strong legal disagreements with the administration. I can give you on the
Contracts.
I will not identify specific.
Sure.
There are contracting issues.
Mm-hmm.
There are personnel issues. There are budgetary issues. There are issues about how we address the public's essential need for safety on the streets. It's no surprise that the council and I did not see eye to eye on how to handle the industrial production of medical marijuana. I'm not going to go into the whys and wherefores. It's not appropriate ethically for me to
Right.
talk about my analysis of that issue. But there are numerous and an aggregation of issues that have come up in terms of how Oakland has dealt with intergovernmental questions that I find troubling. There are issues about the licensure.
When you say intergovernmental, for my
I'm not going to give any more
no,
detail.
no, not detail, but the definition of intergovernmental.
Well, we do things with other cities that are around us.
Right.
We are in contract with other cities, with the county.
Okay.
That's a big one.
See, I just put some meat on it. That's
Yeah,
all.
just
you know,
the
so much to figure
disagreements
out, yeah.
became so many that I was starting not to feel comfortable in the job. But then several issues that have come up, and there has been one issue that I've spoken about publicly, and it's the only time in 10 and a half years that I publicly spoke about an issue that the council was considering in the future. And that was the police and fire retirement system. And I did write about that. And in retrospect, I'm I mean, that was sort of in my mind the beginning of I need to think about what I'm doing.
The beginning of the end.
Maybe. I mean, that issue. And I know that's a surprise to people because people think it was, other issues. Some of the people who are in favor of industrial pot farms have bought into the idea that I took the position I did with the council because I'm against
Can you,
pot farms.
just for the people in the video who are picking this up for the first time and are insiders, could you talk more about the police and fire issue?
Yeah,
And
police and fire retirement system was created years and years and years ago. It was closed to new members 35 years ago. That doesn't mean everybody was retired 35 years ago. It meant any police or firefighters hired after 1976 would go into the big state pension system, PERS. But anybody before 1976 who was hired before 76 would be in this now closed system called PFRS, Police Fire Retirement System, PFRS. The public has been paying for nearly 30 years a special tax override that was supposed to cover PFRS. That has been either inadequate or has not been placed into the system, and the system is underfunded.
Wait. Where did it go if it wasn't placed into the system?
You'd have to look.
Wow.
So it's been underfunded.
Is that legal to do?
Can't comment.
Understand.
It's been underfunded. And in 1997, while I was on city council as the budget chair,
So wait, you're telling me we paid a special tax?
you still are. You're still paying a tax override for this.
But it's not clear where that tax goes.
Well, it goes to PFRS, but it's not adequate to fund what the PFRS benefits are. I'm not saying the money was stolen. Let me be clear. I'm
Yeah,
not
I wanna
saying-
clarify
What I'm
that.
saying is,
Because that's what it sounds like.
No. Well,
Okay.
Let me get to where I
All
gotta
right.
get.
All right.
In 1997, the city council voted in a split vote, where I voted no. City council voted in a split vote to issue bonds for 15 years that would pay the city's annual PFRS contribution. Basically on the idea that we'll borrow money, we'll play the stock market, and if we make more money in the stock market than the interest we're paying on the bonds, we
We're
win,
fine, right.
and we get 15 years where the city doesn't have to, city government, the general fund, isn't called upon for PFRS.
So if there's a crash,
Well, in 2000 there was, and there was another. And so the consequence is, it didn't work out at all as I predicted, and Councilmember Spies and Mayor Harris and Councilmember Nadell, we all said this is a very risky venture. It turns out, according to the auditor, the city auditor, that decision cost the city $250 million. Now, council members today...
is that what the current city auditor?
The current city auditor says that
Courtney Rubin.
decision, looking back,
Right, yeah,
doing a
sure.
forensic,
Doing
looking
research,
back,
yeah.
said it's $250 million that we lost by doing this. And the reason I wrote about it is the city's 15-year payment holiday is up next year. And what is the solution to that, according to, it seems, the majority of the council and the mayor and the city staff? Float more debt. Use more debt, so use yet another credit card to pay the interest on the second
Current
credit
credit
card
card.
that was paying the interest on the first credit card. There's only one ending for that kind of pyramid of debt, and that is bankruptcy.
Right.
There's no other way out of it. So what they're proposing is another 5 to 7 year holiday, which of course is great for the politicians who are in office today because it means we don't have to pay the bill. It's another 5 to 7 years, we'll just push it off.
To the
Even
next
if-
administration.
To the
Or,
next generation, really.
right.
Even if
Yeah.
the project works, the 5 to 7 years, and they make 7% a year on their return on investments, in 2024, 25, and 26, we're still going to owe over $140 million a year each year. So $423 million
Per
to be
year.
exact, altogether over 3 years.
Okay.
141 a year, 2024, 2025, 2026. There is no scenario.
Well, you don't mean a new 140. You mean the same
No, I mean, we're
added on,
deferring.
because someone's going to add that up and say it's 140 times 3.
It's right, so it's 423
Okay. just
over
right,
3
cool.
years.
Over 3 years.
It's
okay.
141 a year is the estimate now. 24, 25, and 26. the general fund for the city of Oakland will have to pay $141 million.
That's
What-
enormous.
Well, of course, it's huge. It will break the bank. So what the solution will be then will be to extend it again.
And I should clarify, it's enormous because I'm not afraid of big numbers, but it's enormous versus our capacity to pay it.
Correct. Well, the
That's
city's
what I'm getting
general
at.
fund budget now is between 400 and 450 million dollars.
Right. That would be 1/4 of the budget.
It's 1/3.
Right.
It's 1/3.
Excuse me. That's not correct.
So understand that what the solutions will be to extend it again. What will happen is to pay that $423 million bill, we will extend it another 30 years probably. And so here's what you end up with at the end of this.
With interest.
With interest. At the end of this just paroxysm of irresponsibility, you end up with taxpayers in the 2050s paying the price for pensions of police officers and firefighters who worked for the city in the 1950s. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
And I have deep, deep moral problems with this. And that's one, since I already spoke about it
It
publicly.
sounds like the only solution is bankruptcy.
No, it's not a solution. That is the path. If you continue piling debt on debt on debt,
Yeah.
you have to go bankrupt at some point.
Right.
Right? So that's a big concern to me. So to go back to your original question,
Sure.
which is why not stay and fight? If I were on the city council, I would stay and fight. It's easy, not easy, but it's possible to fight policy from the city council. This chair, the city attorney's position, should not be a policy position.
Because of the attorney-client relationship.
Because of the relationship and because of the ethical duty of the person who sits in this chair to be the implementer of policy made by the council as designated by the charter. Now, there's a couple of things I get to do under the charter that I don't need council permission. There are some state laws allow me to bring some cases that I don't need council permission. But overwhelmingly, the nature of this job requires the person in this seat, as any lawyer, to put aside your opinion about what should be done and defer to the decision makers. I can no longer defer to, particularly with the new administration, to a course of conduct that I believe is antithetical to the moral interests of this community, and that we are clearly on a path to bankrupt the city. I can't sit here anymore and be part of that.
I got to ask you before, just shifting gears for a second, because I think it's more consistent with a lot of the videos. We talked about your relationship with the sports organizations. Talk to me about your legacy with that, because the reason I say is the first video we did, sitting right over there, you talked about how you resolved all of our sports issues.
At the time.
Yeah.
And now there's new ones.
Talk about it.
Well, the new issues, we've talked before about the A's. They still want to, go away. The economy is not cooperating with their plans. Nobody knows where Major League Baseball is. They did
That study that never
Blue Ribbon
surfaced.
Commission, and I don't know, maybe the Blue Ribbon Commission, I just don't know.
Maybe it went pink.
No, maybe the Blue Ribbon Commission came up with the wrong answer. I don't know. All we can do is speculate.
That expression on your face means you know something, though.
No, I truly don't know anything.
Really?
I swear, I don't know anything.
All right.
I'm just speculating that the answer didn't come up what was desired
By
the
them.
powers that be.
By the commissioner.
I'm
My
not
words,
going to
not
comment
yours.
more than that. Maybe it's
Right.
not true. I don't know. I'm speculating. Pure speculation.
What about the Raiders?
The Raiders, say they want a new ballpark. They want a new stadium. It's understandable. They also seem to understand that there's no appetite for public finance. And, I think the Raiders are trying very hard. The Raiders are a different deal than the A's. The A's, I've felt for a long time, just have not really wanted to cultivate their fan base because they wanted to prove a point. We don't have a fan base in Oakland, and so we're going to alienate this fan base that had over 2 million people coming here when the team won. it was almost.
Well, they don't know how to brand it. They don't know. They don't know. I'll say this: they don't know how to brand their team to begin with.
Well, no,
and most teams in the internet
I'm not
age.
gonna get into an
No,
argument
I'm just
about
saying.
that.
It's an argument.
Yeah.
Most teams in the internet. I'm telling you, most teams in the internet age don't get that their fan base is a brand, and they can come from anywhere. They take care of their center first, and they go out when the A's are one of. I'm just saying, the A's are one of the people, one of the organizations that make that mistake. Now that's me,
Okay.
not you.
Yeah, I don't have any opinion about their branding. I actually like I like a lot of their campaigns, a lot of their advertising campaigns. I think they do a decent job there. I have questions about tarping up the upper deck
Right.
in order to try to create scarcity, which meant walk-up people weren't coming anymore, moving around from radio station to radio station to radio station, so fans can't find them, rolling over the roster over and over and over again so that fans can't really get attached to players. Just a lot of things that they've done. It may just be the way it turned out, but it certainly didn't help in promoting a fan base.
Did you talk to the commissioner when he visited?
I have never talked to the commissioner, and I have not been part of the team that's done the A's project.
Okay. Now,
So,
what about the NFL commissioner Goodell regarding the Raiders? Because he says he wants the Raiders and the Niners to team up.
well, I know he does, and that's probably a good idea given the economics of things right now. Don't know whether or not the 49ers will get their place done and whether they want to share. The teams have to want to share too. NFL's an interesting animal because it doesn't have the antitrust exemption that baseball has. So legally, the commissioner would like them to team up. I don't know that the commissioner can command them to team up. Commissioner in football, and this is no knock on the current commissioner or any of the prior commissioners. Commissioner in football doesn't have that antitrust shield that the baseball commissioner
And I got to ask you this question before I shift to the Warriors. How in heck can we do a deal with an organization, Overstock, for a naming rights agreement that is in litigation against the county of Alameda for just $7 million? Did that cost your desk at all?
No, it's JPA policy. I didn't come across my desk for approval, but I don't know what the market is.
Should the JPA be restructured?
Should the JPA be restructured? Well, it shouldn't be 8 members because that leads to deadlock. It shouldn't be 4 county, 4 city, 4 public, 4 private. I mean, having even numbers like that, you don't need to get to any kind of criticism of the people who are involved. All you need to look at is 8, where it's 4 and 4 from each organization, is a recipe to not be able to move forward. So to that extent, at a minimum, there ought to be some type of tie-breaking method when the board gets deadlocked, and I don't know what that is or how that's
It's just
done.
that what's troubling to me is that this area was valued for naming rights at $80 million. If we got an $80 million naming rights deal, and I'm saying this not just to set up anything, but just being honest, $20 million of that would have went to the city of Oakland. With the kind of deficit problems we have right now, that would have been great to have.
Yeah, it'd be great to have, but I don't know whether or not it's there. I mean, you're in that business. I'm not.
Yeah, Farmers Insurance signed a $700 million deal for an LA team that doesn't even exist.
I understand that, but you understand
That calls into
business.
question. That's why we need more deal makers like you here rather than going to Alameda, which is getting a gift. That's the point that I'm making.
Okay, well, I'm not prepared to comment on any of that.
Got okay. Now, Alameda.
Yes.
What's first on your agenda down there?
Well, there's a lot of things that need to be done in Alameda. First, there are a number of people in interim positions in Alameda. And so the team needs to be made permanent. The most important thing right now in Alameda is stability. They've had, counting me, when you count the interims, they will have had since 2005. So in 6 years, I will be the 7th city manager in Alameda.
My God.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. It's too much turnover. You have an
What's the
interim
problem?
fire chief, an interim police chief, vacancy at economic development and planning, interim everything's interim city attorney, interim. And so first things first.
The last city manager was interim.
The last city manager was interim. I am not interim. I'm on a 5-year contract. So everything in any organization, not just a public organization, but particularly in a public organization, everything depends on stability. If you're going to do good work, there has to be stability. And so the first thing I have to do in Alameda is to reconstruct the executive management team and bring stability. That's going to take time. So that's one. Two, the city has a tremendous development opportunity in Alameda Point. We're shortlisted for Lawrence Berkeley Labs. We're going to pursue that like no other city in the East Bay. Alameda has tremendous public support within its population for the Lawrence Berkeley Lab project in a way that I think is going to be beyond what any other of the, yeah.
So back to Alameda.
I was talking about Lawrence Berkeley Lab,
Right.
and Alamedans seem to overwhelmingly support bringing Lawrence Berkeley Lab to Alameda, and so when the
whole thing.
whole thing, meaning the whole expansion, and
Expansion,
plus the room for further expansion that they want provided at the site.
Does that mean that LBL will exist on the hill, but they'll just expand into Alameda?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's helpful. But I don't think it's an accident that the reuse of bases has been held up throughout the country, and specifically Navy bases in the Bay Area. There must be structural impediments. We know that bases have structural impediments, particularly in the way of toxic remediation.
Mm-hmm.
But my plan is to re-engage the federal government in terms of how base reuse is working regionally, and try to open up a discussion about kickstarting the base reuses. It shouldn't take 25, 30 years to get
Right.
these bases back into reuse, and that seems to be everybody's program now. It seems to me there's a great opportunity for development here.
Is there a way to get the president involved?
I don't know. It's what I'm
Because
trying
it's,
to do.
yeah. Now, on the matter of changing the culture of Alameda, does the Alameda culture need to be changed?
The City Hall needs to adopt these three words: accountability, responsiveness, and transparency. By those I mean, if you look at Alameda's budget and you look at performance measures that are included for each department, they are in significant number, they are input-based, not output-based. What I mean by that is, they'll say, your job is to make sure you've gone to 12 League of City meetings a year if you're the intergovernmental person.
Right.
Who cares? Your job should be get this many $1 million in grants out of the state government for Alameda, or,
Right.
or demonstrate.
Right.
There need to be output-based quantitative measures as a starting point. Without those,
As it
it's
would be
hard-
for any business.
as it would be for any business or any organization.
Right.
Now, this is when people talk about we should run government like a business. You can't run government. Government's not a business, but you should have standard business methods involved.
Right.
So I'm hoping over the next year to walk the city council through a process to completely revamp their performance measures. Because what gets measured is what gets done. So that's accountability. Responsiveness, I've heard from too many Alamedans that they write to City Hall, or they email, or they call, and they don't get a response. That will change. Transparency, about 18 months ago or so, the Contra Costa Times people called Alameda the least transparent government in the Bay Area. That too will change. We will, by September, be on a 2-week agenda schedule so that everybody in Alameda can see what their government will be voting on 11 or 12 days in advance of the actual vote, so there's no sandbagging the public, whether intentional or inadvertent. We are going to open up City Hall. That doesn't mean, I want to be absolutely clear, it doesn't mean that the government is going to go run a poll to decide what to do on each matter. This is not what we're doing. That's not the idea. But I think it's important to allow real public comment on issues. And I think it's important that members of the public, the residents of Alameda, the businesses who pay taxes in Alameda, it's their corporation. They're the shareholders. They need to know what their municipal corporation is doing on their behalf. So transparency is critical to good governance. So again, to repeat, it's accountability, responsiveness, and transparency. So there'll be some changes at Alameda City Hall, but they won't be anything that...
But also, for the first time, you're taking out a whole city.
Mhm.
You're the city manager. You're not
Yeah,
one of the
CEO.
council members, right?
Right.
That means, how are you going to relate to your workers? What about the issue of you going to go out and introduce yourself because you're the CEO? I mean, what are you going to? What about that?
Well, Alameda has just under 700 employees. And the reason it has that many is because it owns its own electric utility.
I
Right?
didn't realize that.
Okay, we have Alameda Municipal Power, AMP, the greenest little utility west of the Mississippi. And Alameda Municipal Power has quite a few employees, of course. So we've got about just under 700 employees. That's not so many that I can't get a good handle on who everybody is. This department at its peak was about 90 people. And Oakland has about 5,000 employees. I probably know 400 or 500 Oakland employees. So, I don't know. I mean, being CEO it's new for me, but it's obviously something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to be the chief executive officer of a city, and this is a city that has tremendous...
Take it from a guy who's had 2 companies. There's no piece of cake, pal.
No, of course there's no piece of cake. I'm not looking for a piece of cake. When I'm ready to retire, I'll look for a piece of cake. I was looking for a city that had significant problems, but also had significant opportunities to solve those problems and to do some exciting things. And I believe Alameda fits that bill, and I know Alameda really well.
How do you respond to the charge that you always wanted to go here, and so you sort of bought your way in?
I love that. Yeah, I also wanted to go to El Cerrito, Richmond, San Francisco, Piedmont, Emeryville, and every other city where I've given money to candidates. It's just silly. People say some really foolish things in politics.
Some people.
Some people do. Yeah, of course, not everybody. But yeah, look, I gave Marie Gilmore, I think $1,000 in her mayoral campaign in 2010. I gave her, I think, $3,000 or $3,500 in 2004 when she ran for council the first time. So does that mean I like her only a third as much? I gave money to Lena Tam when she ran for the hospital board in 2004. Understand something. As city attorney, being Oakland's first elected city attorney, I took a strong position that I should not give any money to any local candidates.
Should I cut? Or
Yes.
Cool. So continuing.
So as city attorney, I have never given a dime or raised money for candidates for Oakland City Council or mayor or auditor or any of those things. And the reason was because I didn't think it was appropriate, because city attorney is also a department head.
Right.
And it's supposed to be independent, and independence works both ways. That hurt me and hurt my political career, because the currency among politicians are mutual endorsements, and I stopped endorsing. And so I think part of the problem, part of my seeming political isolation, was my decision to not give money in Oakland. But now that I wasn't given money in Oakland, it started in 2000, if you take a look at the records, you'll see I started giving money in Berkeley, in El Cerrito, in Richmond, in Alameda, in Piedmont, in San Francisco, because I care about government. I care about good government. And so...
Plus you have relations. Not like you just saw somebody and saw do it, but you know these people.
No, right. I mean, Marie's been a friend for a long time,
right.
And since 2004, and I thought she was very talented, and I wanted to promote her career. So I've been given money for a long time. So the idea that I did this, or that they would give me a job based on a $1,000 or $500 contribution, is so ignorant that, and this is the only time no one's talked to me about it. I haven't commented on it. After this, I'm not going to comment on it again. It's just ignorant about how the world works, and what was unfortunate was that it was presented as if it was an isolated incident. It didn't show, for example, I gave Marie a lot of money in 2004. In 2006, Marie endorsed me, did a television commercial for me, walked door to door with me in Alameda. So of course when she ran for re-election in 2008, I gave her money. Of course when she ran for mayor in 2010, I gave her money.
Did the publication that came out with this ever call you about this?
No. And they went with it
Typical.
without talking to me. Yeah, well,
Typical.
you know, it is what it is. It was designed to create an impression, not designed to share facts. It was
Under the guise of journalism,
It was a fact isolated
which
out
is
of
why I
context.
say I'm not a journalist.
Right. It was a fact isolated out of context to create a misimpression about what was happening. Let me say this, though, because to the extent that people, particularly in Alameda, look at it and say, oh, this guy's a player and he gave money, and as long as I'm city manager in Alameda, no one, friend or otherwise, is going to get a penny out of me in Alameda elections. So I will not be donating to any of the city council members or any of their opponents or anybody involved in Alameda politics. County supervisors who represent Alameda, congressmen who represent Alameda, state senators who represent Alameda, none of them will I donate to, because I think it's important that professional staff stay out of the politics of the area they're in. But I will continue to give money to candidates I believe in wherever in the East Bay, Piedmont, Richmond, San Leandro, Emeryville, El Cerrito, now Oakland. I'll actually be able to give money in my own hometown again.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So,
Now, before we close, SunCal is still out there.
they have a lawsuit against Alameda.
Right. And
Well, this is one of the reasons why we need to get some stability at the city attorney's office. I'm going to want to hear from the city attorney, what do they think of SunCal's case? SunCal had an exclusive negotiating agreement with Alameda, but they did not have a disposition and development agreement. They did not have a contract.
they didn't graduate to that.
They didn't have a contract to do the base.
But they did pay staff money over that period of time.
Right, but the question in the case, and I'm not going to characterize
Sure.
any of the facts, the question is, you have no expectation of getting to that DDA, the disposition and development agreement. An ENA, exclusive negotiating agreement, is like an engagement.
Right.
It means we are going to work together to get married, but you're not married yet, right? So I don't know what the facts are, and if I did, I wouldn't discuss them anyway, because
Sure.
it's not my role. It's for the city attorney and for the city council.
Well,
to
rhetorically, was it appropriate for the past city manager to force SunCal to pay staff time?
decide. I'm not going to comment on what the
Okay.
past city manager did. Alameda's
Or is it
moving-
that you have to clean up what she did, Anne Marie Galan?
Alameda is going to move past whatever people think about the last city manager, if you place that in context, it is a 6-year period with instability. City manager after city manager after city manager. Alameda needs stability. So I'm not going to get into at all publicly. I may have some opinions, and I may have stronger opinions after I start in Alameda, but I'm not going to get involved at all or comment publicly about the performance of anybody who went before me.
I think that's a fair way to end. John, I'll miss you, but of course, next drought I'm going
I'll see you
to
at home.
beat your ass.